Good morning, everyone. Let's get started. I want to let you know that this webinar is recorded, and so I'll be sharing the recording with everyone afterwards. And then also there's a chat section here in the meeting where you can ask any questions, and I'd be happy to address those questions after my demo and presentation. Okay, today is the introduction to Matrix. So what that means is it'll be a crash course into the software. I want to make sure that you get a lot of value out of today's webinar. So hopefully, if you're new to Matrix, you'll learn the in and outs, and then also how to use it and how to get started. So why Matrix? And then really there are three main reasons why customer come to Matrix. The first is if you're an individual, you want to have a better understanding of how to prioritize your personal tasks, projects, and emails. And then at the team level, get a clear understanding of team priorities and responsibilities. And then thirdly, at the organization level, understanding how to stay aligned and how to maintain a single source of truth. And Matrix really serves all three. We have customers across thousands of companies, and it's every single possible use case that I can possibly imagine. I've over the years, I've talked to so many customers from so many different perspectives. So I think the most important in all of this is the first one. And so hopefully after today's webinar, you'll get a really good sense of understanding how to succeed at the personal level so that you have a really good understanding of what you should work on at any point in time. My goals for today help you understand the basics of Matrix, how to use Matrix to manage your goals, and then how to turn goals into projects, and then how to get the most out of Matrix with the least amount of effort. And so, the 80-20 rule applies here. What are the 20% of features in Matrix that would give you 80% of the value? And so hopefully I'll share that with you today. And then, when you get started, you can immediately dive in and get value out of the system. Let's start with Matrix and what it is. Matrix is a comprehensive email priority and project management software that helps individuals prioritize their most important tasks and emails, helps teams stay aligned on key projects, and then helps organizations create a single source of truth to become more effective and more efficient. We'll start with the basics behind Matrix. There's a famous quote attributed to former President Eisenhower: "What is urgent is seldom What is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important." And what I really like about this quote is that it helps us sort of appreciate how we spend our time. Let me give you an example. Let's just say if I asked you to write down the 15 things you have to do this week, right? Just write them down. And so you write down the 15 things, and then I'm going to ask you a question. Which of these things are you going to work on first? So how do we make such decisions? Do we start at the top or do we start at the bottom, right? So the top meaning the first thing that comes to our mind, and the bottom meaning the most recent thing that probably just popped up. And so what happens is that a lot of us work with lists. This is my checklist. This is what I got to do, right? My to-do list, my checklist. And so the terminology is very prevalent. But instead, what if we just ask a simple question of those 15 things you have to do? Is that item important and is it urgent? And so you can imagine that if you take those 15 tasks and you categorize them into those various dimensions, what you get after you do that is actually what's called a matrix. And so this is the Eisenhower Matrix. And the basic idea is that we take that dimensions of importance and urgency, and then we map them. And so we create 4 different buckets. So the important and urgent, those are the high priority tasks. And then important but not urgent, that's the medium priority. And then the urgent but not important is low priority. And then everything else is uncategorized because you should not have anything that's not important and not urgent. So essentially, the bucket number 4, the uncategorized bucket, really is sort of like your inbox. So when you come up with an idea or you have a task that's assigned to you, it starts there and then you prioritize them as needed. And the interesting thing here is that the low priority is urgent but not important. And this is where a lot of us make mistakes. What happens is we fail to distinguish between urgency and importance. And so let me give you an example. Let's just say today at the office and you're sitting there and you're at your desk, and then suddenly someone comes to your door and then start asking you to do something. right? And suddenly that task somehow, for whatever reason, becomes important because it's just happening right now. And the same thing happens to our emails. I get hundreds of emails every single day. And guess what? The last email in, that's the one where you tend to put the most time and effort, right? And you look at it first, even if you have a lot of important emails that's further down the list or maybe from a few days ago. And so um, the reason why we get so many spam emails is because, the more they spam you, the more it surfaces, and therefore the more likely that you'd actually spend time looking at it or respond to it. And so this is one thing that, the biggest takeaway from today's webinar is applying the Eisenhower Matrix to your task, to your work. So if you don't use Party Matrix, if you don't use our software, if you get nothing else, hopefully this is something that you'll take away, which is just to think about the things that you have to do from these dimensions of importance and urgency and bucket them into these various contexts. So now you've taken those 15 tasks and you've categorized into these buckets. Now I'm going to ask you to do something else. Go to your manager and ask them to do the same. Then go to your direct reports and also ask them to create their lists of action items and then prioritize into these various buckets. So imagine this simple scenario where everyone's sitting there, everyone's written down all the things they have, put into these various buckets, and then I'm going to ask you to compare notes. So let's just say you have your tasks, you have your initiatives, everything you're working on this week. Your manager, has his or her list as well. You compare notes, and then you start seeing, wait a minute, I thought this was high importance. I thought this was important and urgent, but how come it's, in quadrant 3 for you or quadrant 4 for you, right? And that's where the magic happens. What happens is that vast majority of time we're aligned, as an organization, as a team, we know exactly what everyone's doing, so if everyone's on the same page. But then once in a while, we actually have this disagreements that's sort of like in the background, but no one is daring to bring it up, right? Someone asks you to do something, you sort of just work on it without even questioning it, without even understanding whether or not it's truly important to the organization or to the team. And so all of us end up just working on things just because it's on our list, as opposed to consciously deciding what it is we need to work on. And so this simple exercise does two things. One, it forces you to be on the same page, and it surfaces up all those discrepancies that you didn't realize were there. And then the second, it actually helps you um, find the disagreements. And so the interesting thing is that the 4-quadrant Eisenhower matrix create alignment, but then success from using Party Matrix or the Eisenhower matrix isn't about from finding what everyone agrees on. It's discovering disagreements on what should be a priority when it isn't. And so I think, if you do this exercise, which I strongly encourage you to do on a weekly basis, which is to write down the priorities into the Party Matrix format and then compare notes with your teammates, you're going to find so much value by eliminating work. So a couple of tips to shortcut your success as you think about Party Matrix. When you use our software, we have these concepts called projects, and I'll dive into that in a little bit. But a couple of things as some takeaways first. If you're a manager, then create a project for your team staff meetings. And so when I say a project here, I mean have an Eisenhower matrix for your priorities within the team, and it's something that you screen share every week when you have your staff meeting. And I guarantee you that you're going to find so much more success and be able to ensure that everyone's on the same page. And that's all you got to do every single meeting. In the first 5 minutes, project it on the screen and talk through it, then focus on the most important task. So then when everyone's doing their updates, they're not talking about, the thing that just happened. Instead, they should be talking about the things that are important. And so if you don't do this exercise, what happens is people will always just bring up the thing that just happened. And that's because that's, that last email they got or that last meeting they just had. If you're managing multiple sites, then create a matrix for each of these sites, each of these locations. So when you have a lot of different priorities, make sure that you actually put them in the right context, right? So, if you're managing multiple manufacturing locations, each location should have its own priorities. The beauty of Party Matrix is that it can aggregate all this information and roll it up for you automatically. So my suggestion that if you end up doing that, make sure you have a matrix for every single one of those different locations. Same thing with initiatives. So that means with initiatives, you just have different matrices for each initiative. And then if you have specific training programs or repetitive processes, Protomatrix has a really powerful template system to replicate all the tasks that you have so that you don't have to redo work. And so I do believe that's actually pretty important, for all of us to make sure that we don't spend time redoing the same thing we do over and over again, recreating tasks and so forth. If you're a business owner, I can't, I can't emphasize enough how important it is just to create a project for each of your departments. I've just talked to so many business owners, so many CEOs, where what they want is they want a good understanding of what's happening at the high level for every single one of their departments, but then be able to drill into the specifics as needed, right? That's the key. And so with Protomatrix, you can actually have projects or matrices for each of your departments. And then within that, you can actually pull information from other places, and then you can actually have one central place and to see the priorities and see what's behind schedule and so forth, reprioritize at a broad level, and then drill down as needed. And then lastly, but perhaps most importantly, as an individual, create a project for your goals. And there are examples of so many things you can track, but your personal priorities, but also things like, if you want to get a promotion, right? If you want to get a promotion, then you have to track the tasks that you have. And Protomatrix has a really neat way to generate all the work that you've done. So then when you do your performance review, you don't have to go and dig through, multiple meetings or, tons of notes to emphasize what you've done. With just a few clicks, you can generate your entire workload, all the things you've accomplished over the past quarter, and put it into your performance reports. So anyways, these are high level tips that I wanted to share with you. And then we're now going to dive into the nitty gritty details of how to actually implement this and put it into use. Before I do that, I want to mention that the webinars, like this webinar, is actually also the recording is on our website, so affluence.com/webinars. And then we also have webinar recordings that covers a couple of other topics in more details. So for example, more a deep dive into email management or a deep dive into templates. So if you really are interested in that, be sure to check out those recording. Okay, now let's take a look at Protomatrix and how to put everything that we've talked about here into use. I'm going to kind of show my screen here. And so you should be able to see my Protomatrix. This is an example of a view in Protomatrix. So let me give you a sense of the structure. On the left-hand side, these are your projects. Every project is a matrix. That's all you got to think about. So what that means is that, you might have a project for your team priorities. You might have a project for your personal priorities. You might have a project for the initiative you have for this quarter, or whatever it is that you're working on. Now, my first thing I want to emphasize is don't be afraid of creating projects. It's okay to create projects. Understanding what you should do across all projects is the problem that Protomatrix solves. Therefore, you want to make sure that you track everything within the proper context, right? If you have one super matrix with 5,000 tasks in it, it's a big mess. It's kind of hard to know what it is you need to work on. Instead, you should have maybe 50 matrices with 100 tasks in each. Then you, at any point in time, you can, drill down and see what is it you need to work on. So that's my general guideline. So now when I select a project, as you can see, I have the quadrants front and center, right? Protomatrix emphasizes the quadrants as the number one thing. And the reason is it helps visualize your priorities. What happens is, I'm sure many of you use task management software or to-do lists or sticky notes, whatever it is that you do. And the problem that you have with the list is that it's one long list, and then you have rarely, it's hard to understand what to work on. And then also when you add something, do you add it to the top of the list or the bottom of the list? And so therefore, by creating the 4 buckets here, it's so much easier to see exactly where you should spend your time. And then not only that, what happens with Protomatrix is you can actually resize the quadrants. So then imagine when I start my day, I don't have to look at the full list. I just go and look at my high priority and then my medium priority, then low priority as needed. So that's the powerful thing about the matrix. So let's do an example. Let's just say I need to follow up with webinar participants. Okay, so obviously this is a task that I will do because I'll follow up with you guys and send you your the recording. And then here's how it works in Matrix. That's an example of task, but I can just say due tomorrow at 2 p.m. and I press enter. Now, Matrix actually uses what's called natural language. And then when I select this task on the right-hand side, it takes that due tomorrow, 2 p.m. and create the due dates for me. And then it uses my local time. So what's neat about this is that, you might be on a different time zone than me, but when you say due tomorrow, 8 a.m. or due tomorrow morning or due in 2 weeks, it uses your local time to set that due date. And so as you can see, as an example here with this task, I have a couple metadata I can add to the task, and this is what's called the item details. So first, it tells me what project it's in, because I can move it to another project if needed, and then the task itself, and next to the task, I can star it, which means it pops at the top of the list, and then what happens, I can actually click on icons here, and then be able to go and assign it an icon, right? So for example, it might be related to travel, or it might be something else I want to give it additional context, or you might use red, yellow, and green to signify that that task is behind schedule or on schedule. Below that, I have owner. When I create this task, it's assigned to me, but maybe I need someone else involved. Maybe I need to assign to another person. I can go and assign to another person. And then in this case, I've just taken a task, I've assigned it to a person, and then also have set the due date already. Next, I have progress, effort, and reminders. Now, effort is actually pretty straightforward. How long is it going to take? Not all tasks are created equal. So some tasks will take you an hour, some will take you 30 minutes, some will take you a few days. Now, if you happen to set effort in Matrix, what it does is it actually tracks that for you, and then later you can actually build a report and export to CSV and count how much time you've spent. So if you're managing a team and you're trying to manage your resources and see, what people are spending their time on, the effort is a way to track that. But the neat thing is you don't have to track effort at all. In fact, when you first start using Matrix, I don't recommend that you use efforts just yet. Just track your tasks, track your priorities first, and then after that, once you really looking at the information at a higher level and then trying to understand the drill down into the details, that's when you actually start using effort more consistently. Progress is 0, 100%. If you create subtasking per matrix and you have 5 subtasks and you mark 2 as done, then you're 40% there. But you can also manually set it as well. And I'll show you a couple of reasons why you want to use progress in a moment. And then now I want to highlight the 2 most important features that I think you should use. Due dates, which is very obvious when something is due, and reminder, which is actually very different from due dates. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're working on taxes. And so in the US, taxes due April 15th, right? So you set a due date for April 15th. April 15th approaches, you see the due dates, and if you haven't gotten started, there's no way you get that done because you have to spend so much time data collecting and all that stuff. So therefore, what you want to make sure is you set a reminder before the due date. And so this happens all the time for a lot of us. We set a due date, and then when we set that due date, we're like, okay, we've written it down. That's good enough. But you realize that there's a big difference between when something is due versus when you should get started, or just being top of mind. And that's where reminders really come into play. So what I like to do is I like to do the following. I click on reminders, and then I can choose one of these options, or I can go down here in the message and I said, remind me daily. So now what I've just done is I've created a task with the due dates, and then I set a daily recurring reminder. So not only will it remind me one time, it'll remind me until the task is done. And there's a reason why this is so powerful when it comes to prioritization. What happens is that we all have a lot of things to do, right? And then in the beginning, you know that something is important. Great. There's no question there. And then what happens is as the due date approaches, you sort of in like this panic mode and you're like, okay, I got to get this done. I got to get this done. But the moment that due date passes, that item suddenly becomes the past. And when it becomes the past, you start to forget about it. And so every day that you're past that due date, you're thinking about it less. And then not only that, we get bombarded with new tasks. I mean, just think about your emails for a second. How many emails did you get this morning, right? And you probably have multiple emails that's important. But guess what? Every day, every moment, you get a new email. and suddenly that new email is at the top of the list and you're forgetting the old past email that's important. And so that happens to our most important tasks as well. So by setting a reminder, but a recurring reminder, it ensures that this task that's important stays top of mind. Honestly, this is my most, to me, this is the most important feature in Matrix, which is to make sure that my most important task stays top of mind. So this is what I like to do. I like to go and, when I follow up with a customer, I always do due in 1 month and remind me monthly. So if I ever forget, it's okay. The next month I'll get a reminder again, and it ensures that it's top of mind. So when we talk about 80/20 in Matrix, these are the two features I want you to use. Every single time that you create a task in Matrix, set that due date and set that reminder, okay? Now down here, we have the chat section. This is where you can actually have a whole conversation with your teammates, but it also track a record of all the changes. So Matrix automatically build a history of all the changes. So in the beginning, it may not seem important, but what happens with the history is that it becomes very useful when you have tasks that span across a long period of time. And then also if you have a lot of people involved. So let me give you an example. Let's just say if you have to get, several people to sign a certain contract or something like that. You create the task, you have all the people involved, and then, in the beginning, you have all these action items you're supposed to do. And then as you update the action item, as you update the task in Matrix, it actually keeps a record of all that. So then you can go back and review the history as needed. So the chat provides both that history as well as a place to have that instant communication within the context of the task, right? If you have a conversation inside Microsoft Teams or in a meeting, that's great. It's very dynamic, it's very fluid. The only problem is if you need to review that conversation in a few months, you're not able to have that information easily accessible. And so by having the conversation within the context of the task, it's tremendously helpful. In the notes section, this is where you can actually create subtasks, you can create bullets and so forth. We have this neat feature filled with AI where Matrix will actually generate a series of tasks, subtasks for you. So then you can, make progress on that. And then finally, in the resources section is where you can upload files, documents, emails, as well as linking to other tasks and resources. So on a personal basis, you could think of the resources as a place for you to track every document that's important to this task, right? So when you have an email that you need to respond to, obviously the email is important, but then also maybe you need a document, a draft, or a proposal or whatever it is. And so by using Matrix resources section, you can have it all in one central place. Then when you delegate this task to another person, they can go to resources and know exactly they get exactly all the information that they need to proceed. So at a high level, that's what Matrix is. One, you have a list of projects, and each of these projects have their own priorities. And then within each priorities, you have all this additional information that you can add. Again, the important things are due dates and reminders, right? And then in Matrix, make sure that you create these tasks within the various quadrants. And then from there, prioritize and look at it to determine what it is that you need to work on. So let me give you some example. I'm going to switch to another project here with a few more tasks. So here, again, I have my team priorities. There's a couple of things I'm going to do. I want to show you. On the right-hand side, this is your this is your project details. So your project details tells you information like, okay, what's the project name? You can star a project. So when you star a project, it pops to the top of the list. So I mentioned to you how, maybe you should have 50 projects with 100 tasks in them. Well, guess what? In my work account, I have more than 300 projects. I have tens of thousands of tasks. So therefore, what I do is I always star the few projects that are most important. Below that, I have team members. So when you, as a manager, have a project and you have that staff meeting project that I recommended, you create a project called My Team Priorities. Then you go to members here, invite your entire team. And then when you have that presentation and you're sharing your screen, everyone can go in and see exactly what the priorities are. And then not only that, after the meeting, they can go back and review as needed. So essentially, members is a way for you to have other people collaborate together on one central matrix. And then which part of matrix, you can actually also customize both the quadrant name as well as the colors. And so when we talk about the Eisenhower Matrix and using high priority, medium, low priority, that's a recommended approach, but in reality, you can customize it, using the terminology that resonates with you and with your team, and then change the colors as needed. And then inviting people to the project is actually very easy. You just click on this plus here and invite team members, and then you can also remove team members as needed. And then Matrix also let you create departments. And so what that allows you to do is you can create a project for your marketing team, for your HR team, et cetera. And so instead of actually managing individual users, you can actually just associate a project with the entire team. So if you're a small business owner, it's actually pretty straightforward. You create different user groups for the various departments that you have, and then add people as needed. So now let's take a look at this particular project, and you see how I have a lot more tasks here, right? And it's assigned to different people. So the matrix is the main view, but with Matrix, you can actually also switch to other views. So if I click on this drop-down menu, I can go to the list view. The list view shows everything that you have, but instead of in the matrix form, it's in the list form. What I like about this view is it's very easy to see things that are overdue, because each of these columns can be sorted. And as you can see, the tasks that I starred, they're at the top, right? So in this particular view, you just want to see what are all the things we have to do, who it's assigned to. You can sort by people, you can sort by name, by due dates, by percentage completion, and so forth. So anything that's red is overdue. So if you're worried about things being overdue in any of your projects, that's where you go. Then you can actually go to the Kanban view. The Kanban view is actually a way for you to see everything that has to be done, everything that's being worked on, and everything that's been done, right? And so if you're a project manager, and let's say you're working on a construction project and there's 50 tasks you have to do, everything from getting permits to contacting vendors to whatever it is that you have to do. Well, ideally, everything that you have goes from to do to in progress to done, right? And so if you ever need just to know the status of things, you go to that Kanban view, and it is very, very helpful because you see as things move from one bucket to the next bucket to the next bucket. And then you also have the calendar view. And so this shows you the everything that's happening in this particular matrix over the next few weeks or next few months. And then you have what's called the Gantt chart view. And so the way the Gantt chart view works and why it's different from the calendar is the following. The calendar, it's very good for you to see the things that's due today or tomorrow or in the next few weeks. But if you need something that spans across months or years, the Gantt chart does a much better job. So as you can see here, when I go to the Gantt chart view, Matrix automatically take all the tasks that I have along with all the due dates and just build this Gantt chart for me. And so as an example, I can actually export this Gantt chart and put it in my PowerPoints or whatever. I actually had a really interesting conversation with a customer where, one of the challenges they have is that they need to understand what's happening in real time. Let me ask you a simple question. Imagine, if you're overseeing a team and you want to know what's everyone's working on, and then, what are the key status of all the key tasks that we have. What do you do? Some people literally have to go and schedule a meeting, get everyone in one central place, have the meeting just to get a sense of what's happening. But with Matrix, it's the opposite. All this information that's in Matrix essentially is asynchronous. So what that means is people can update their own priorities whenever it is that they do the work. They can update the due dates and so forth. And then Matrix will build out those reports for you and then create those Gantt charts and the calendar for you in real time. So when you use Matrix, you know what's the latest right now across your entire team or across your entire organization. And the value there is tremendous. Now I'm going to show you something that's really neat, which is the ability to generate reports. So I'll go ahead and go back to the list view here. And then what happens is this. I can click on this drop down called the multiple selection, and then I can go select all and then choose email items. And what's really nice about this feature is Matrix will actually build an email report that you can send to an external party or to your manager or whatever it is. So imagine if you have a project where you're doing a bunch of tasks for a client, right? And so let's just say you have 25 tasks you're doing for a client, and then you're making progress on some are behind schedule or whatever. And then the client asks, hey, by the way, what else is on our plate? So all you have to do is you go to Matrix right here, select this, select all items, and generate email report, and you can send that to the client. But what's really neat is that you can actually combine filters. So then if the client says, by the way, what are the things that we finish? So then you go to finish, you do the exact same thing, you select all, and now you can generate an email report that shows the clients all the tasks that you finish. And then you can imagine how you can actually use this in so many different ways to talk to external people, or just to send your executive an update on the most important tasks that you have. And so the filter option combined with our email report option gives you a way to stack those together and then, create a custom report for whatever it is that you need. As you can see, I can actually filter by all sorts of dimensions. I can filter by quadrants. I can filter by users. So earlier I mentioned to you how, let's just say if you want to show your manager all the work that you finish and that you deserve a promotion, right? So here in Matrix, you just go to the quadrants here. I'm sorry, to the filter. You choose all the finished item, and then you choose assign to you. And now Matrix will show you all the tasks that's assigned to you that you finish, and you could even choose the time span, by the way. But when I do that, I just go here, and then I can email or I can export as CSV. And then I take that information and I paste into my HR portal. So that's one of the things I wanted to bring up to you, which is, Matrix, using Matrix will require an investment of your time. You have to create tasks, you have to update it, you have to set due dates, you have to mark them as done. But after you do all that, Matrix will actually give you a ton of value because it can generate all those other reports for you and then show others that you're making progress on your work, and it does all of that seamlessly. So there's a ton of value downstream that's not so obvious from the beginning. But I want to encourage you to look at Matrix as an investment of your time and that it pays dividends afterwards. Okay, so that's an example of a single project that you might have. Now, I mentioned that, you might have a lot of different projects, right? So again, for me, I have hundreds of projects. Therefore, I'm not going to be able to go and click through every single project to know what I need to work on. So Matrix actually offers a couple of views. When I start my day, I always start in the home view. So the home view tells me the items that require my attention. So there's a section called the alerts. And the way the alerts works is that it tells you tasks that you've been assigned, and then tasks that you have due dates on that are overdue, and then tasks where you've set reminders. And so as you can see, I have 26 items here that requires my attention. And so I can click on every single one of these items and then actually view the details around that task, right? And so it shows my tasks on the right-hand side here. And then as I go through this list, then I know that I've already seen everything that's important to me. And then I can also clear notification as well. So sometimes, let's just say you've been off for a few days, there might be a lot of tasks, but maybe you want a clean slate, and that's where you go to clear your notifications. Then you can go to what's called your agenda. And this is where it tells you what you should work on across all of your projects. So the way the agenda view works is that it takes every task that you have across all your projects, looks for all tasks that have various due dates, and then shows that information here. But as you can see on this option on the top right, I can actually do two things. I can choose the task that I own. So now that will show me all the tasks that's assigned to me. Or if I'm a manager, I actually change the items I follow. What that means is you see both the tasks that are assigned to you as well as tasks that are assigned to others that you're part of. So that is actually very helpful as a manager to be able to know not only what's on my plate, but what's on my teammates' plates as well. And then, of course, I can always go to my items to see the complete list of tasks that I have across all of Matrix, even the ones that don't have due dates. So that's the home view. And so I strongly recommend, playing around with the home view because that's where you see everything that you have to do. And then again, when I talk about those recurring reminders earlier, guess what? You have a task that's overdue, you forgot about it, but those recurring reminders will keep popping up here in the alert section to ensure that it stays top of mind for you. I've caught myself missing an important task so many times because I just have so many things on my plate. Therefore, those recurring reminders is a lifesaver. Now on the left-hand side, you have a couple of other options. So earlier we saw projects, But now we can actually go to what's called the one-on-one view. So if you're a manager, this is actually a very powerful view that lets you see the tasks you have in common with your direct reports. So imagine if you manage a team of 5, right? I don't expect you to click through every single project to know what it is that your teammates are working on. Instead, you go to the one-on-one view, you select the person, and then Matrix will automatically show you all the tasks you have in common with that person across all the Matrix. So then when I have a one-on-one with my coworker, guess what? We can just look at this list and say, oh, yay, I see that you have this. I see that you have that. I see this is overdue and so forth, right? You can click on every single one of those tasks, edit it, change the due date as needed. And then you can actually also create share tasks directly from here. And when you click on that add share task, you can create a task that is automatically assigned to your coworker. You can set the due dates using that natural language that I showed you earlier, and then you can even organize by the project as well. The problem this solves is the following. Imagine you have a meeting, and then you have a meeting with your coworker, and then you talk about 5 or 10 things that you're going to do. Then 2 weeks later, you catch up, and then you say, hey, by the way, did you get that done? And then the other person said, oh, I never wrote it down. I forgot. Right? I had to run to another meeting afterwards. All right. Sounds familiar? So instead, when you have a meeting in Matrix, you just go to the one-on-one view. And this could be inside Microsoft Teams, by the way. You should click on add share task and create the task at that moment. And then you don't have to worry about assigning it to the person. You don't have to worry about setting due dates. You don't have to worry about creating and finding the project because you can actually do it so quickly. And then again, from here, from this view, imagine that you might want to have to bulk edit. Again, you click on this drop down. You can select specific tasks, or you can select all tasks and then edit them. Now, let me give you another example of where this one-on-one view is actually really powerful. Imagine if you bring on a new person and you need them to take on some task to help somebody, right? So imagine you have person A, and then who has a lot of tasks on their plate. Then you bring on person B, and that person B is supposed to take on some of these tasks. Well, guess what? You go to the one-on-one view, you select person A, then you go to the drop down, and you start selecting a bunch of tasks, or you can combine it with filters, and you can say, you know what, show me all the tasks, and then whatever that filter is, it might be related. You can search for it or whatever, and then you select those tasks, and then you bulk reassign it to a new person. So suddenly you've managed your resources from one central view. And this applies to the scenario where you're bringing on new people. It also applies to the scenario where a coworker might have a lot of tasks on their plates, but they're going to be on leave, right? They're going to be out for a few weeks. And so now you need to reassign that to somebody else really, really, really quickly across all of Matrix. So this is not related to one project. This is across everything. So you can imagine how useful that is. And then not only that, you can actually still generate those email reports. You can still export a CSV, change due dates, and so on, all from one central place. I really like that feature, by the way, just in case that wasn't obvious to you. But that bulk edit feature in Matrix across all of Matrix is really, really useful. Then you have what's called a global calendar. So now instead of just looking at the calendar for one project, you look at a calendar across all your projects. And what's nice about here is that I can choose what project I want to run the calendar for. So what that means is it allows me to focus, but also zoom out. And so might have 5 or 10 projects related to a certain operation that I'm working on. Well, guess what? I just choose those projects, and now I get to see the calendar for that. And then I have to have the same thing with the Gantt charts. So this is the global Gantt chart. So it shows you everything across all of Matrix, but then you can filter it, or you can filter by projects and get the Gantt charts just for what you need. And so you can think of using Matrix again as a way to create this base layer of all the tasks and priorities that you have. And then it's using Matrix, you can actually take all that information and generate whatever it is out that you need. And so as you can see here with the Gantt charts, I can zoom out, and now I can see all the tasks that's happening across my organization, not just for this year, but also through 2025, 26, 27. And then I can filter and say, you know what, show me everything that's assigned to me or assigned to a certain person. And so you can actually plan out not just the next few days or the next few weeks, but you can plan out years in advance. And the last master view, the last global view I'm going to show you is the search view, which is also called the master view. So when you go to the search view, this is the most powerful view in Protomatrix because it gives you a complete perspective of everything. So let me give you some example. If you, let's say as a manager, and you manage, again, a team of 5, you have a bunch of projects, and these are your coworkers that's on it. When you go to the master view, you can see what all your coworkers are working on. Now, if you're the CEO of a small business, right, you can actually get a version of Party Matrix where you can have what's called um, the master account, which gives you complete visibility across all of your organization. And what happens when you go to the master view here, you can see exactly what everyone's working on, and you can see exactly what tasks are overdue and who's overwhelmed, right? And so this master view gives you that full perspective. You can combine it with filters. Again, you can search for things. You can find tasks assigned to specific people, and then also you can generate those email reports or CSV exports. Really, really powerful. It gives you all the visibility that you need. But the neat thing is, you don't have to go into the details unless you really wanted to. So that is something I wanted to share. And then I mentioned CSV a couple of times. Party Matrix has a really powerful CSV export import system. So if you go to a project, one of the things you can do is go to the project details, and then the top right, you can export as CSV. So this is something that if you have a project and you want to know how many hours people have worked on it, that's what you do. You export CSV, you open the CSV in Excel, you can do pivot tables or just sum up the total amount of effort hours and bulk assign it to people. And then also Party Matrix allows you to import from CSV as well. Extremely helpful, especially for people who are managing tasks at a large scale. So Party Matrix allows you to have, let's just say you have an Excel document or a CSV document with 1,000 tasks in it, and you can just import into Party Matrix, and within seconds, the entire Party Matrix is built for you. Really, really powerful. Okay, I'm going to switch gear a little bit and talk about email management. So emails, I think, is the biggest challenges, is one of the biggest challenges that affect all of us. And for me, what happens is that I get a lot of emails. I can't answer all of them right away, but I need to make sure that I have some sort of due dates or reminders for them. Because I can't just star it because I already have hundreds of starred emails, so that wouldn't work. So if you experience these kind of problems that I just described, you got to check out our email integration here. So let me give you an example here inside Outlook. Let's say you get an email, and this email, a customer is asking for a quote or something like that. You go to the add-ins and you choose turn emails into tasks. So Part of Matrix, turn email into tasks. You click on that, and then you choose prioritize email. When you choose that option, you get this view on the right-hand side. Then what I can do is I can choose what project it goes in. So I can organize this email. In fact, I can say, this is related to sales, this is related to marketing, or this is related to a certain customer. Then I can choose what quadrant it goes in. And then I can even assign this email to another person. And I can say due in 1 week. And then I can say, how long is it going to take, and click capture email. So Matrix can take that email and create a task and allow you to set due dates, delegate, and organize into the priority level as well as the specific projects. And as you can see, after I do that on the right-hand side, this becomes an item detail. So now I have the item information itself inside Outlook. I don't have to go to Party Matrix. And as you can see here, I can go and tell my coworker, I need you to look at this ASAP, okay? And then I can say remind everyone daily. So now suddenly my coworker has received a task from me. There's a very clear due date. And then I mentioned, I gave him additional context, and then I say remind everyone daily, so that on a daily basis, they'll get a reminder. This is not something you can do with any email program because, right, you can only flag them or you can forward them, and they create these massive chains of emails. That's kind of overwhelming. But instead, I have one central place to have a conversation about an email. My coworker can go to the resources section, click on this email file, and see the original email from the customer, as well as any attachments or whatever, and then they can respond to the email as needed. Or they can go to the resources section and then upload documents that may be drafts or proposals or link to my SharePoints, OneDrive, whatever it is, all in one central place. And then you can have a full conversation here between your coworkers without creating more and more emails. So extremely powerful way to prioritize email. And you can imagine how it works for you as an individual too, right? Just taking an email, creating a task from it, and setting a recurring reminder to make sure that you get to that email. And then what I can also do is if I get an email, I can actually attach it to an existing task. So this is a very unique feature to Matrix. Instead of just turning emails into more tasks, I can actually go to this view, search for a task in Matrix, and attach that email to an existing task. So as an example, you're in a conversation with your a customer, and then the customer sends a follow-up email. You can take that email and attach it to an existing task that you already have for that customer. And then all your coworkers who's already in that task will get to see that email as well. And they have one central place for it, right? And so especially if you're managing enterprise customers or you have lots of back and forth with either your law firm or external parties or whatever it is, Matrix helps you manage that. Now imagine if you don't use Outlook and instead you use Gmail. Well, Matrix actually has this really powerful feature called the inbox. So when I go back to Matrix here, I can go to my inbox and I can copy my inbox address. So this is a unique email to my accounts. So you have one as well for every single one of your accounts. So when you can copy that address, and then when you're in Outlook, you can use the Outlook extension, or if you're in Gmail, what happens is that you can take an email and you can forward it to inbox address. So again, let me show you an example here. Let's say you get an email, right? And so what happens is you need to work on this email. So you click forward and then you put that inbox address. So by the way it works is you take that inbox address and you save as a contact. So that's the trick, right? You save it as a contact in your email account. Then whenever you have an email, you actually just forward it into Matrix. You can say due tomorrow, remind me daily. And now when you click send, Matrix will create a task in your inbox and then set the due dates and set you recurring reminders. You can even assign it to people from here as well. So I do this all the time. The reason is, I use my Apple Mail on my iPhone. So therefore, when I get an email, I don't have my Outlook extension so easily. So what I do is when I get an email that's important, I don't mark it as unread. I forward it into Matrix right away along with the due dates. So then I can access that back on my desktop, back on my laptop whenever I'm ready to answer that email. So it's really, really useful. I strongly recommend that you do that. Of course, Matrix also has a Gmail integration, so you can also set that up as well. But I really like the inbox forwarding address. And then not only that, every project in Matrix has an inbox address as well. So what that allows you to do is you can build awesome rules where emails from a certain customer automatically create tasks in Matrix. As an example, all the emails I get from Microsoft gets forwarded into my Microsoft project. So that allows me to have one central place without having to, dig through all these emails and so forth. And then if you're in Outlook, you can also access the entire Matrix application within Outlook. So check this out. I don't even have to open Matrix on the web app. I don't have to open Matrix on anywhere else. I can actually access the entire Matrix application inside Outlook here. And then if you use Microsoft Teams, we're probably the best integrations, the most integrated system inside Microsoft Teams. We're the top selling application as well. So what happens is that when you're in Teams, you can add Matrix. You can pin Matrix on the left-hand side here. So that allows you to access the entire Matrix app without having to leave Microsoft Teams. And then I showed you the one-on-one view earlier. When you have a one-on-one with your coworkers, guess what? You can add the PM one-on-one view. And to do that, you just click on plus, choose Matrix, and then choose the one-on-one view. And then you can actually have a one-on-one with all your coworkers in each of the Teams conversation you have with them. This allows you to access all the tasks everyone has in common without having to open Matrix. So, our goal really is to bring Matrix to where you spend your time, right? And within the context of your work. And so when you use Matrix and you're creating these tasks and these priorities and these due dates and so forth, the beauty of all that is that, that sits in the base layer And then we have all these different views that we bring up to show you the relevant information. And then we have all these integrations that actually goes into the apps that you already use, that you're spending your time on to bring that information to you. And then what's nice about this view too is I can go to a chat. If you're inside, if you use Microsoft Teams, you can enable several layers of integrations of Matrix. But what happens is that I can actually turn any chat into a Matrix action item. I can also send Matrix task directly inside Teams. And then I can also have the Matrix chatbot directly inside Teams, so I can ask it questions like, what do I need to work on? What are the things I have to do this week? And then we also integrate with Microsoft Copilot that gives you an even more comprehensive view of everything that you have to do. Okay, so now what I want to do is I actually want to go back to Matrix real quick and just give you a quick summary of everything we talked about. So I'm going to go ahead and open my Matrix inside Teams. Again, in Matrix, you have your list of projects. Every project has a quadrant. And those, every list has a matrix, and then the matrix, typically uses the high priority, medium, low priority, and inbox to prioritize your task. Every task has a series of metadata attached to it, but your most important one are due dates and reminders. So make sure you use that. And then when you create tasks in matrix, make sure you prioritize them, and then use these other views. And it really depends on your job function, right? If you're a project manager, maybe you like the Gantt chart view. If you're an operations manager, maybe you like the Kanban view. And then if you are making sure, if you're a manager that want to make sure that people are working on the right things, then maybe the matrix view is most important to you. And then just create projects for the different initiative that you have. And the way you create project is you click create here, you choose project, and you can choose everything from a blank project to a public template project to your own template system that you have. So if you have recurring tasks, you can convert those tasks, those projects into templates, so then you never have to create those tasks again. So everything from, imagine if you create a matrix with like the 10 things you have to do for when you onboard an enterprise customer, guess what? Save that as a template. So then when you create a project, you choose that template instead, and then you save the start date, and Matrix will recreate all those tasks and set all the due dates for you. So really, really powerful feature. But I strongly recommend that you create a couple of projects, first for your personal priorities, then your team priorities, and then create a project for, a couple of things that are important to you, as either your marketing, either your an initiative you're working on, or your goals for the quarter, or whatever it is. Don't be afraid to create a lot of projects. I think it's a good thing because it helps you track the context of all those work. And then no matter if you're using Matrix for yourself or for your team of 5 or your organization of 5,000, Matrix is able to handle all of that, and you can have thousands of projects. So that's the beauty of all this. And then you saw the master view, the global view for Gantt, the global view for search, the global view for one-on-one. Matrix will give you all that information that you need across all of your projects, and you can filter it as needed. And then if you ever have questions around, whether your employees are overloaded with work, you just go to the workload management, and you can see who's overloaded and who's not, and reprioritize resources as needed. Okay. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and go back to my presentation here and start wrapping things up. So what to do now? First, sign up for Matrix and use our apps and Teams and Outlook. So if you happen to use Microsoft, Matrix is almost a no-brainer. Matrix is a Microsoft 365 certified solutions, which means we are reviewed and certified by Microsoft to meet all industry standards in security. Matrix also has a desktop application. So what's nice about that is if you use Mac or Windows, you can actually have our desktop application, so it's always there. And then I strongly recommend creating a project for your personal priorities. You are the most important piece in all of this, right? And so if you're able to track your priorities and track the work you have to do, you're going to succeed, and then everything else will just follow. And then when you have a meeting with your manager, just show, your matrix and say, hey, by the way, you asked me to do something. These are my priorities right now. What are we moving, right? I can't have everything in important and urgent. That won't work. So, I'm more than happy to take this new task, but show me what we're going to reprioritize. And I guarantee you, the moment you do that, suddenly all your workload issues will be resolved because your manager will look at it and realize they're misprioritizing. And then similarly, if you have team members that you're managing, being able to understand where they're spending their time is so valuable as well. I mean, I can't emphasize this enough. The whole purpose of Matrix is to create that alignment right across the team members. And then make sure you use those due dates and reminders. I mentioned to you those are the two most powerful features on a task level. And then ask your coworkers to create their own matrix so then you guys can compare notes. If you do this once a week, that's all you need. Everyone once a week, update their matrix. You guys get together and compare notes and say, hey, by the way, these are my priorities. Oh yeah, I see none of this have changed. Fantastic. You're off, and off to the races, do whatever it is that you do. But once in a while, you're going to find a disagreement, and that's where the magic happens. Set 1 hour each week to dedicate it to reviewing and updating your priorities. That's easy. We spend so much time doing things, and we barely spend time thinking about whether or not we should be doing them. So I hope that you take this into consideration. The most important work that you can do on a weekly basis is determining what you need to work on. Then you do those things. So doing the wrong things right is probably worse than not doing anything at all, right? It's better to know what's the right things to do. And then compare notes with your coworkers. It's very, very easy. You can see that in Matrix, you don't have to use all those fancy tools that I showed you. You don't have to use Gantt charts. You don't have to use Kanban view. All you need is the matrix view, update your priorities, drag and drop, and review them with your coworkers. What success should look like with Matrix? On a personal level, you check Matrix every week to remind yourself of your goals. You have one central place to track your priorities. On a team level, everyone understand what everyone else is working on. You're taking those emails and you're triaging them, and then you're able to see everyone's priorities in real time asynchronously. You don't need a meeting to know the status of tasks. You just need to open Matrix, go to that project, and see exactly what the priorities are. Okay, with that, I'd be happy to take any questions that you have. Please send them in the chat, or if not, send them to me at hi@affluence.com, and I'd be happy to answer your questions. Thank you so much for your time. I see someone asking about the cost for the users. Actually, if you have the license for $75 a month, you actually have the capacity for a lot more users than that. So reach out to us, helpdesk@affluence.com, and we can help you with that. But no, not every you don't pay that for every user. So you can definitely add users to it. The next question is there any way to see subtasks in the alerts? Or can reminders be sets, or should those be created as tasks and not subtasks? That's a great question on subtasks. So the way it works in Matrix is the following. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to here, and then I'll go here. And then as you can see in my subtask, so I can go and say, subtask 1, subtask 2, right? Subtask 3. So what happens is that these subtasks are just within the task itself. And when you mark those subtasks as done, it updates here the chat. But it actually, when those subtasks are modified, it actually will send you an alert. So let me give you an example that's concrete. Imagine if you create a task, and within those tasks, within that task, you have those subtasks. When your coworker marks those subtasks as done, it actually would update the task. Therefore, it'll show up in the alerts. So then you can click on it and see that progress been made. So I don't know if that answers your question, but if you need fine-grained details on the subtask, then I would recommend that you create them as actual task. And then when you go to resources here, you can actually link items together. So that means you can actually say that, some items depend on another item. So Matrix has several layers of dependencies. You can say block by, blocks, caused by, causes, or you can just say that these items are related. So if you want to have some, a series of items that all link together, you can do that because Matrix treats everything as a link. So let's just say one of your tasks is so complex, there's a whole project around it. Guess what you can do? I can actually go take a project, go copy the link to a project, paste that link right here, and Matrix inherit the entire project information as a task. So now I can see that that task has, 2 items in quadrant 1 item in quadrant 2, and 2 items are overdue. So that's a very, very powerful way to really take one task and expand it into a whole complex project on its own. So, I recommend this for executives because, they don't necessarily want to go and dive into all the details, but they just want to know if, this project has tasks that are overdue or what's falling behind schedules, etc. So you can create what's called a dashboard project. That's a long way to answer your question. Hopefully that helps, but essentially Matrix has those different layers. Matrix has a lot of AI solutions. So what happens is for every task that you have, you can use our fill with AI and it'll help you fill out the subtask. When you create a project in Matrix, you can actually also use our AI and just type in your goals, and then Matrix will automatically build the task for you. Of course, it's just a recommendation. You can modify those, you can delete them. They're not perfect, but they helps you get started. So it's actually, let's just say you want to improve your, marketing by 30%, your social media marketing by 30%. You type that goal here in Matrix, you click next, and Matrix will build out a series of tasks to help you achieve that goal. And then also, of course, we have integration with Microsoft Copilot. We also have the AI chatbot that you can ask questions around, what do I need to work on and so forth. Great questions. Are there any other questions? All right, so this I'll follow up, and then you'll get a recording of this webinar by tomorrow. But if you have any other questions, feel free to send me an email, hi@affluence.com, and then helpdesk@affluence.com for other technical support questions. As I mentioned, we have a lot more deep dive into email integrations, and then you also have um, email integrations, but also on templates and so forth. Okay, another question around automatic reporting. Well, yes, so actually Matrix generate reports all the time. So when you go to Matrix, you can actually do a couple of things. You can select a project. Let me see if I can select a project here. You can go to the reports tab. So Matrix automatically generate a real-time report for every single one of your projects. So in this report, you can see where people are spending their time. You can see what everyone's working on, the number of tasks created, completed, etc. over whatever specific time period. You can see a burn down. So if you have 50 things you got to do, you can see how quickly they're trending downwards. And so when we use Matrix at our organization, we have 3 types of projects. Transient project, right? That means they have a start and an end. Therefore, those number of items goes to 0. And then you have persistent projects that are around forever. And so therefore, the number of tasks keeps on building. And then you have the repetitive projects. So those are the one that we turn into templates. But these reports right here are automatic. They're automatically generated, but also you can go to the general reports here. So Matrix also generate a report for you on a recurring basis, daily updates, weekly updates, quarterly updates, and so forth. So all of that is generated. But again, the most powerful reports you can generate is in real time using the master view, because you can go and generate reports for everything that's been done by any single person within your scope. All right, thank you all. Appreciate your time. Have a wonderful afternoon.